Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is David Hurwitz with CA. I'm actually local here. I'm based right down 101 in Redwood City. CA, as you may know, is headquartered in New York with operations everywhere around the world. But we have a rather large footprint in Silicon Valley and here in the Bay Area. I'm from our Redwood City facility. So we're pretty excited to be here at Dreamforce. I think that everything we've seen from the stage yesterday and this morning from Mark Benioff and all the great developments from Salesforce itself and from partners is really tremendous. It's clearly a new world, a new transition, a new platform that we're all going through. And if you're old enough like me where you've seen one or two of these, it's always exciting when we get to a new platform and a new paradigm, the things that you can do, because you can always do new things. So we're going to talk about some of that here this afternoon. We're going to talk about really four things. And in a minute, I'm going to ask each of you to sort of tell me by a show of hands which of these things you're here to see. So we know about the Sales Cloud and the Service Cloud from Salesforce.com. One of the things that I want to talk to you about this afternoon and that you saw demonstrated this morning on stage between Mark Benioff and my CEO, John Swainson, is the Development Cloud. In fact, the Agile Planner for managing cutting-edge development. But that's not the only thing that our customers are interested in as they look at their transition to the cloud. In fact, many of our customers are large enterprises, large banks, insurance companies, governmental agencies, airlines, so forth. And with that scale comes some interesting challenges. Maybe some of you are from large enterprises like that as well. So they have challenges around how do they manage the rollout of cloud-based services, just from a training and a conversion and a procedure point of view. And how do they manage and make it easy to have unified single sign-on access to all the different systems that their people are needing to get access to, whether from the cloud or in on-premise or elsewhere. And last but not least, they also are increasingly rolling out composite apps that have cloud components, maybe all cloud components, or maybe some of those cloud components are joined up with on-premise components, presenting a composite app out to the user. How do they guarantee that great performance is being delivered from the user's point of view, and if in fact and when in fact things happen that performance perhaps degrades, have some idea where to look. So together, those form the cloud management capabilities that are in the middle. I'm going to come back towards the end of the presentation and talk about those. So before I start rolling into this, let me see maybe by a show of hands if perhaps maybe one of these is of more interest to you than the others. So how many of you are here primarily to see about Agile Planning and the Development Cloud? A few of you. And then what about some of these others? How about managing rollouts of Salesforce.com? That's the biggest number. How about single sign-on and getting consistent access and easy access across all your services? Few, great. And then last but not least, how about performance management for composite apps? 3. Okay, so a few of you are here for several of these, so that's great. So it's a bit of a buffet that I'm going to serve you here this afternoon, because when we deal with large enterprises, they're not just looking for one thing or two things. There's various things you have to do in order to roll out any kind of service, cloud or otherwise, across a good-sized enterprise. But let's start by talking about Agile development and the Development Cloud, because Agile development is something that started with small development teams and is still very much I'd say now probably universal with small development teams, and that's an area that we're interested in serving now, CA is. We're also finding that our large customers are now starting to incorporate Agile development into their overall development portfolio. So we think we've got the perfect partnership here between CA and Salesforce.com. CA, as you may know, is the Enterprise Project and Portfolio Management leader, PPM, Project and Portfolio Management. We've got a terrific product called CA Clarity. Anybody here use Clarity or familiar with Clarity? At least a couple of you. So CA Clarity has been remarkably successful. In less than 10 years, it has mushroomed to over 1,000 enterprises using it as customers, over 250,000 users. Most of the Clarity customer base is using it on-premise. A couple years ago, we started making it available on demand, and now almost half of our new Clarity customers sign up for it and just access it out of the cloud. We expect that number to grow. And as I was saying a moment ago, many of these Clarity customers are managing large development portfolios, software development portfolios, and they're starting to do more and more agile development. So they've been coming to us asking how can they incorporate native support for agile development, agile planning. It's a different terminology. It's a whole different mindset. We're not looking at Gantt charts anymore. We're not doing work breakdown structures. How do we support that, especially for the teams that want to do that, while still having a holistic view over our entire development portfolio, including our traditional development projects? So we were thinking about that. And then Salesforce came to us and said, you know, we love agile development, and Salesforce is arguably the largest, most successful agile software developer in the world. Now, I'll show you some stats later on, and I'm also going to suggest you might want to attend a talk tomorrow morning by Salesforce about their use of agile in their own development that I think would be very interesting. So anyway, Salesforce has been tremendously successful with agile development. In fact, had even developed an in-house tool that they were using called ScrumForce on Force.com in order to manage that. And with the overall success of Force.com, with the 100,000 plus developers in the Force.com development community who are looking for a Salesforce-blessed native agile planner, you bring 2 and 2 together and you get 5 or 6 here. So that's the partnership that we're bringing together. CA is now 110% committed to developing and bringing out to all of you in the world this great agile planner and making it work with our CA Clarity, and in this way enabling the development cloud. So that's the introduction on that. Let me tell you some more about it, and then in a little bit I'm going to invite my colleague Michael Lester up on stage, and we're going to actually give you a demonstration. Some of the demo you saw this morning, but we'll have more time here and we can go more into it. So with the CA Agile Planner, what we want to be able to do is provide native, rich support for agile development. And then working in concert with CA Clarity for those organizations that have mixed development or are using Clarity to provide visibility across the portfolio for all kinds of projects, agile and otherwise. The other thing that we're doing, I'm going to go into some more detail on this in a minute, is we're really drinking the Kool-Aid on Agile. Agile says that we should really have our requirements and our requirement backlog informed by, even driven by, the users. So to that end, we are kicking off an Agile development community, which, by the way, is powered by the Salesforce Idea Exchange, where we're inviting all of you and everybody else around the world to come in and suggest features that you would like to see in an Agile Planner, vote on features, and so forth. And frankly, that's going to help drive our requirements wall. When I say requirements wall, any Agile developers in the room here know what I mean by requirements wall? We're going to show you a requirements wall in a few minutes here. So we're really going for this. We've got a great head start with ScrumForce. I'll show you more about that in a moment. And then we've got a great set of developers down in Redwood City who are really enjoying developing on Force.com and building this out. And then it's going to be further informed by the community. And we're building this on Force.com, obviously. It's going to be available for everybody. It's going to be available in what we're going to call the Team Edition for people who just want to use the Agile Planner on its own, and then in the Enterprise Edition for people who want to use it in concert with CA Clarity. So let's talk a little bit more about Scrum Force. I heard Parker Harris give a talk yesterday. He runs development at Salesforce, and he said before Agile, maybe 3-4 years ago, Salesforce was like so many other software companies. I've been in a few of them myself, where releases were late, releases were kind of inconsistent. When it finally did come out, you know, product management or the users thought they were going to get a thoroughbred racehorse, and in fact, they ended up with a camel. All the sorts of things that all of us who have been around software development are used to. So starting in 2006, Salesforce went completely into an agile development methodology. They do, as you all know, I think 3 releases, not 4 releases a year, 3 4-month-long releases a year that are comprised of 3 to 4 sprints per release. Sprints, you know, and people know when I talk about, I see a few heads nodding. So in Agile, what you do is you chop up your release into short cycles called sprints, where the developers develop a set of requirements into features that at the end of the sprint are supposed to be shippable. And of course, in the cloud, shippable just means turn it on and make it available. We don't have to burn anything onto a CD anymore. So you get this iterative development, you get all these checkpoints. It really makes a virtue out of the fact that we, the user, or the product managers like Michael here, think we know what we want, but until we actually start to see it come to life, we're not really sure what we know we want. I began my career as a software developer, and we used to curse that behavior, but you know, that is the nature of the beast, and Agile makes a virtue of it, especially when you can develop from the cloud. So that's what these guys have done. And you can see they've got 50 teams, 500 users, and they have, like clockwork, and I'm going to guess most of you are SFDC end users or Force.com users. I mean, the results have been phenomenal and have worked out well for all of us and for Salesforce.com. Over the last 3 years, these 3 releases a year have really left the rest of the industry in their wake. And so, sure, cloud development gets some of the credit for that, and Force.com gets a lot of the credit for that, and the vision of Mark Benioff gets credit for that, but their adoption of Agile and the tool that they use to make that, and their rethinking of chopping those releases into 3 sprints gets a tremendous amount of the credit for that. It's clearly the way to go. If you are developing software that's going to be delivered from the cloud, it's the way to go. So as I mentioned, we are really encouraging all of you and all your colleagues and anybody who cares about Agile development, whether or not you're in a big enterprise, whether you're a one-man band in the spare bedroom developing a Force.com app, come to ca.com/agile, sign up, and you're going to start to see the ideas that others in the community have contributed. You can vote on them. You can contribute your own ideas. How many of you participate in the idea exchange for the main idea exchange that Salesforce has? Yeah, most of you. So this is very familiar to you. It's really another instance of that. And we think that's such a terrific idea, and again, especially given that is the ethos of Agile. So let's get it all in there, and that's going to give our developers plenty of material to work with on their requirements wall. You'll also be able to sign up for the beta. So let me mention now a bit about timing. So what we're going to show you today, what you saw on stage, what Michael's going to show you in a few minutes, frankly, is very early stage software. It's pre-alpha software. Our planning is that we're going to be having this available in the App Exchange for general availability in the early spring time frame, maybe late March, early April, something like that. But there'll be a beta available before that. So another thing you can do if you join the community is you can sign up for the beta if you're interested in doing that. So here you've seen a screenshot. We're going to see the real thing in a few minutes. But the core functionality that you're looking for in an Agile planner, the ability to manage your backlog, the ability to capture those ideas, to prioritize them, to put them on a virtual wall, And we've got a great, it'll look much better in the demo. You'll see the virtual wall and the drag and drop and so forth, so that you can do your release planning and your sprint planning, so that you can look at the availability of your resources and then get the burn down chart so that you can see that you're going to whether or not you're in risk of making or missing your sprint completion date. And then for those of you who are operating in larger environments where maybe you've got other development teams that aren't using Agile, or just tons of development teams and engineers who are being assigned to a variety of projects, and the different project managers are unaware of the conflicts when they're perhaps requisitioning in-demand engineers, that's where CA Clarity comes in. So the team edition of the CA Agile Planner will talk with CA Clarity back and forth so that resource commitments and expected delivery dates and so forth will be visible at the project portfolio up at CA Clarity, as well as the overall resource planning, so that you'll be able to do comprehensive skills and manpower planning to see what your consumption and what your forecasted demand of different skill sets are, where you might be in a pinch in 3 months or 6 months or 9 or 12 months, and how your overall project portfolio is tracking. Of course, this is the way that people use PPM and CA Clarity today, except today, when you get down to the project level, you've got to use the traditional project management methodologies of Gantt charts and work breakdown structures, either in Open Workbench or Microsoft Project, or do it right in the browser of CA Clarity. That's great. It's been great up till now. But now we have Agile, and it's a fundamentally new way to think about project management for software development. And so we wanted to support that natively, and that's what we're doing here in the Agile Planner. So Michael, let me invite you up on stage here. Michael Lester, the product manager for the CA Agile Planner, and take a look at this thing.
Okay. Thanks, David. So as he said, we'll walk through a quick demonstration here. Started off here kind of to give the context. How many of you saw the keynote where John walked through this? So if I miss a step, remind me. You guys have all seen a better demo than I've got. So, I mean, the real important piece here is, that as we've talked to companies, they've got traditional projects going on. They've got agile projects that are in their organization. And how do we make sure we get visibility into all of it? It's been a tough challenge when developers are writing notes on Post-its or cards, sticking them on a wall. How do I get visibility into that? How do I roll up costs? How do I understand where all my resources are working? So the first piece here is making sure that from Clarity in the PPM position is that I've got the ability to roll that information up so that I have visibility into it, so management doesn't look as those that are practicing Agile as, rogue developers who are off doing their own things. They have no documentation. They can build and do whatever they want. We see the benefits. Our own team, actually, for the development of our products, we use Agile methods, and we don't want our management team coming to us and say, you can't see what's going on, so you can't do Agile. There's definitely some advantages. As a product owner myself, it's nice because I can be responsive to the market. I'm not locked into a development cycle and say, okay, this is what we committed to, and we're stuck with that for the next 9 months while development goes off and does it. With the Agile approach, I can put new requirements in. I can change the priorities of requirements as we move along, but I can still, through Clarity, actually give that visibility back up to management of, here's how we're doing. We're still on track. The release is still going to go on at the time. And management can still get simple things down here, like indicators of, are we on budget? Are we over budget? Are we on track for target deadlines and whatnot? And how are our resources being allocated? More often than not, resources are in, some are on Agile projects, some are on traditional projects. Most of the Agile tools that exist out there, from what we've experienced, is, the amount of resource availability is limited to what they can see inside of that tool. Mm-hmm. And so by connecting Agile up to something that's got broader visibility across resources across the organization, it gives us a much better picture of how we're actually doing, who's available. If somebody's not in Agile but could offer a skill, we want to be able to have visibility to them and pick them up. So as was shown, I come in here, I've got my project. It was the retail system project. And I go over into the Agile Planner. One of the things that we've done in Agile Planner, David talked a little bit about the backlog. One of the things we've done is we actually have 4 sets of backlogs, because we realize people work at different levels of of specificity. As a product owner, I know what I want to put into the product. I just don't know when I want to get it. There are things based off priority. I want some things now, and some things can wait, and some things are going to move up from that low priority to the high priority list. So I have a product backlog as the first tier. If things, as I talk to our customers, things they want to see, I can throw them in that product backlog. They don't get assigned to a project. Developers don't know about them. They don't get work. Then as we go into our roadmap planning, we're going to say, okay, we've got 3 projects coming out over the next year, and as part of that, I'm going to have 3 timed releases that go with that. I have a project backlog and a release backlog. And those backlogs hold the requirements, the user stories. Agile got a very nice approach to requirements management. It's not, let's go out and build a giant PRD, or let's don't go break out requirements in a requirements management system down to system and technical detail level. I want to capture something in the dialogue of what a customer would understand. It's a scenario of what somebody would like to see. So some of them here you see, because our developers filled out some of this demo data, it's more technical than not. But the one example that John used earlier today was to be able to have Mandarin support. And for our Asian retail system, my predecessor, will say, wasn't so bright and didn't think Mandarin support was critical for a retail system in China. So I actually have the ability, and what's really nice is, as we talked with our development team and said, okay, here are our priorities. What we want to make sure we're able to do in the Agile Planner is the system, the technology itself, what we offer, cannot be any harder than doing it by hand. Today, developers write things on a Post-it note, they stick it on a wall. If we make the technology harder than that, nobody's going to use it. So we wanted to make it simple. I've got the ability to come in here. On the wall, I can just as easily pick up a story. Here's my Mandarin support. If I want to grab it, I can just pick it up, drag it to wherever I want. It's got a new priority. If I want to edit the number of story points, I can click and edit, change what's there. Again, it's simple. I don't have to reload forms. Nice thing is the Force.com platform gives us a lot of good performance and has done a lot to tune usability. Once I've got the priorities here, I've got my buckets of, let's imagine this is for my sprint. I'm planning it and said, okay, I've got some very highs, some mediums, and some lows. The one nice thing that we immediately give you is the ability to see how many story points, basically my expression of a level of effort, are associated with that priority. So if I have 1 sprint left and my capacity is to do 30 points, and I have 33 things in my very high, it immediately gives me visibility that I've got too many things prioritized as very high. Maybe I need to break some of those apart. I need to reprioritize. I need to look and understand, here's your capacity, work within your constraints and your limits. We want to make that constantly available and visible to people so that they understand what they're working with. Otherwise, what we find is a lot of organizations, you have 150 requirements and you make 149 of them very high. It doesn't help you out with your prioritization. Here we give you the ability to see what's your capacity in that space as well as and what's your demand. So, how many people in here are familiar with user stories and sprints? I didn't see it when David asked the question. So, a few. Okay.
How about story points? Is that familiar terminology? Maybe 1 or 2.
So, a story point, think about it as everybody does it differently. Some equate 1 point to 1 man day of work. So if I have, in this case here, the second one there, performance benchmarking caching, is 13 points. It's essentially equal to 13 man days of work. Rather than getting down into granularity of hours and whatnot, the idea behind the user story is let's give an expression of some kind of level, what we think is involved here. It's meant to capture both development and test, what's involved in doing that. Makes it a little bit easier to move quickly. As we get an understanding, we can change that number. There's not a fixed schedule based off that. We're just saying it's that many days, and if we throw more people at it, hopefully we can get it addressed and changes the duration.
Hey, Michael, I want to reiterate something you just said. It's supposed to capture development and test. So our purpose this afternoon is really not to give you the complete tutorial on Agile, but as a guy who grew up in the traditional development methodology where somebody developed and then threw it over the wall, somebody else tested, or theoretically developers were supposed to unit test, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Here in Agile, they're supposed to, truly, by the end of the sprint, have everything, all the features, the story points they've developed, ready for shipment, ready for going live. We don't ship anymore. And so that is also a difference in Agile.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, yeah, the idea is at the end of a sprint, I'm complete and wrapped up. It's not test lagging on afterwards.
I could turn it on for the users right then if I so chose.
Right. The one other thing that is common, as I mentioned, you take your Post-it notes, you stick them on a wall. But development happens all over the world. You know, for development of our own product, just on this piece, we now have developers here in California and in China, and we have tests being done in India. And if we have the wall up in our office here in Redwood City, the folks over in China and India can't benefit from it. And many organizations are the same way. Parts of your development organization, project teams are scattered all around the globe. If I have what is essentially equated to the traditional requirements document sitting on a wall somewhere and nobody else can see it, nobody can collaborate, it makes it a little difficult to actually progress and do work.
Hey, Michael, I think, you know, so we're a big developer, but I also think that a lot of entrepreneurialforce.com developers are going to come together as collaborations of people who might be in different places. So it's not just for the big guys. In fact, as much or more, it's probably for the smaller entrepreneurial developers who are going to come together as a confederation to develop an app.
And what's interesting is I actually had a conversation with somebody today about what they want to actually be able to do is to share this out with their customers, a couple of key customers, and help them have those customers involved in their prioritization and planning process. What are the things that matter most? Another one was doing consulting for an organization and wanted to give that visibility to the client of what they were doing with the particular project. And what's nice here is no matter where they are, they've got that visibility into what's going on with the movement of the story points. The other thing that's nice is, you know, when you crowd this thing up and you get a couple, you know, just, you know, 25, 30, 50 requirements, user stories up on that board, it gets very difficult to understand which ones are in what state. You know, which ones are things that we've, you know, everything starts off here to the left as planned. These are the things we're going to work on. As we grab things, developers say, okay, I'm going to work on this piece next. They pick one up. Lose my mouse here. You know, deploy unit tests. Okay, I'm going to drag that over here. It immediately changes color so that I can say, okay, this one's now in process. I can see it very clearly. Anybody who's familiar with Agile knows they have this daily meeting that they call the Scrum. And the basic point of the Scrum is to understand where there are risks or where there are escalations. So if something needs to be escalated, I can turn it red as a developer. So it's immediately called out on the board. That's something that's very difficult to do with Post-it notes. So in this case here, you know, we're trying to make it a little bit smarter. And then, you know, as this particular piece gets finished, I can drag it over here to completed. Again, we wanted to make it as simple and as easy as it is to do with Post-it notes and cards today, just being able to drag and drop them and move them around.
The other thing we wanted to do, where frankly I think we've never done a good enough job with traditional PPM, is we wanted to make this advantageous for the developer himself, for the individual contributor, so that they actually saw it as a net positive in their daily life as far as getting software done. I think with traditional PPM, filling out their timesheets and so forth, they saw as paperwork they had to do, but it didn't really help them be more productive. We think this will.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a couple other things here. You know, the nice thing is as I go through my project work, I can actually come back to understanding the burn down chart. And how many people are in here familiar or heard the burn down chart term? So, I mean, the concept behind it is I begin a project with a set number of story points. In this case, it's sitting, let's say, right around the 310, 300, somewhere in the teens. That's the number of stories I said I was going to do in this project. And the idea behind it is that I'd have a line here that we just don't have in here because we're still pre-alpha that shows the trajectory. So here's from when I'm supposed to finish. It gives me a nice line and says, okay, you know, each iteration, each mark on there is representative of a time period. So it looks like it's going down by 2 days. Every 2 days, I can see the progress I've made of burning down the stack of requirements and user stories that I have. So it gives me, you know, good visibility as a product owner, as a manager. I can look at this chart really quickly and see what kind of progress are we making. It's not, you know, one of the first lessons I learned as a developer was, you know, as soon as you pick up a task, say you're 90% complete. You know, it's a nice, good way to game the traditional project management system. Unfortunately, it doesn't give good visibility back to everybody else of how true you're actually going along here. So as story points are completed, as work is done, it decrements that count there. So I can see how well am I actually progressing, and because I'd have that trajectory line on there, I could say, am I burning faster or slower than I should be? It makes it really easy to understand how well are we actually tracking to what we should be doing, rather than just are we marching along to the deadline like a lot of the, you know, some of the other traditional approaches would give us. There are other reports and stuff that we'll have in here, as David mentioned. The idea exchange is out there, and we're asking for people who are doing Agile or are interested in it to join the conversation. Give us your feedback on things you would like to see, and we're going to push out the the beta early next year, and we want to get people's feedback on how it works and what things need to be there, as well as how we're going to integrate this thing into PPM, what things people would like to see there. So we'd encourage everybody who is interested to go out there and join that community, give us your feedback. So
why don't you hang out for a minute? So I'm going to turn our attention to the 3 Enterprise Cloud Accelerators. Before I do, we have a relatively small group. Any questions about the Agile Planner at this point, sir? Mm-hmm.
So there's not, in the sense you'd have a traditional WBS and everything would break down. There's not one of those behind an Agile project, but one of the things we're actually looking at is how do I map that back into terms that traditional project management understands. And that's going to be part of our integration back into Clarity is, for those who are traditionalists, they can get that visibility they want in a form that they're familiar with, but not everything maps one-to-one. So we're having, there are some tricks that we're going to have to figure out how to overcome that. We're not going to, because the work isn't slated for Tuesday through Thursday, it's hard to draw that out on a Gantt chart. It's going to be, I have 40 points, and how do I change that and convert that into an expression of hours? I don't know that guy is only going to do this task 50% and another one 50%, because Agile doesn't capture that kind of information. So it won't map back into it, but what it will give me is the idea of the size of effort from a high level that's involved in this and how well am I progressing against that effort.
Yes?
Yes, so I don't have that in this version that we're showing here, but I think actually that you had a screenshot. I'm going to go back in here. So one of the things we're thinking about here is this expression as you see these little donuts down here in the lower left-hand corner. They represent, each one of those little donuts represents a resource. And part of it is blocked out in white, representing the availability of this person to this project. So if they're off on 5 other projects and overconsumed, they have no room in that little circle to have any assignments or any work given to them, which is really nice because if you look at some of the other Agile project systems, they're not aware of everything else. And by hooking it into the PPM platform, we get that awareness of, even if they're on traditional projects, wherever their time is being consumed, maybe they're out of the office for 2 weeks. We're going to have that visibility here of what's consuming their time, how much availability do they have to this project, which makes the velocity, which is the key part of understanding how quickly we're going to move through an Agile project, that more accurate. Yes? Sorry, Dave.
So with this solution, you'll have part of the total solution on the platform and part of it traditionally deployed.
That's correct.
Is there a transition plan or a future direction as far as that goes?
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So Clarity PPM is available both on-premise and on-demand out of the cloud. The on-demand runs out of CA's data centers, not out of Salesforce's, but you'll be able to use the Agile Planner with either of those. Miss?
So for our daily Scrum meetings, are you going to have, is there any place to save documentation or to save templates or to restrict who gets to see the daily Scrum meetings or the every other day Scrum meeting notes and the formatting on that?
Yeah, so there will be a complete role access control, so you can identify users and roles, and that'll control it. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to do the Scrum wall, or the Scrum meeting, how we're going to facilitate that, as well as how we do documentation and attachments. So it's something we obviously know. It's part of the process.
Great questions. Okay, I'll take one more, and then we're on. And then the other thing I will say is Michael will be back at the CA booth, and you can talk ad infinitum. But, sir. Both. So you'll be able to buy CA Agile Planner either from Salesforce or from CA, and it'll be available at the App Exchange. And just go put your credit card and get access to it like any other App Exchange app. CA Clarity obviously will only be available from the CA Salesforce. Okay, thanks, Michael. Yep. Okay, so let's turn our attention now to how we support applications that are already up and running, whether those applications are coming out of the cloud or whether they are on-premise. So we have a set of what we're calling enterprise cloud accelerators, 3 solutions available now that we're demonstrating at the booth that are designed to, as the name suggests, make cloud-based services roll out faster and perform better, easier to get into for enterprise users. And as we thought about this, we thought, well, first, with any application, even Salesforce.com, as the Sales Cloud, you need to roll it out. You need to train people as easy as they are to work, and Mark is pretty correct when he talks about how easy this stuff is to learn, but there's still training. If any of you have been involved with rolling out the Sales Cloud to your sales organization, there is still training involved. Procedures need to be updated, so forth. And so we found that providing a tool to plan for that and to manage that, including what all the people are that are needed and their skills, when that's going to happen, is very valuable. And so we use our CA Clarity PPM. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then our CI Identity Manager provides federated single sign-on so that when your users log in once, they can get into any of your systems, whether Salesforce or SAP or anything else. And then we also find, as I said at the outset, that an increasing number of enterprises are deploying cloud composite apps. And when you've got a variety of different services coming together, some that are out of the cloud, some that are on-premise, you don't really know if and when there's going to be a problem for the end user. And all that matters is what the end user, what I see in my browser, and how fast that transaction completes for me. So we've got to monitor that. So let's talk about CA Clarity PPM. We've got an executive on the left who wants, probably a VP of sales in the case of the Sales Cloud, who wants SFA rolled out across 300 sales reps, or in our case, 5,000 sales reps in assorted field types. And you've got a variety of trainers out there and budgets for spending on that. We spent a good chunk of money, not nearly as much as we would have spent with SAP, but still a good chunk of money, so there's a budget to be managed there. And a lot of users this needs to go out across multiple locations. This even was our experience at CA. We rolled out Salesforce.com to our 5,000 field people. So what we found is that our CA Clarity PPM, especially on demand, provides just what you need, especially in terms of project management and resource management, and then financial management in the middle there for managing the budgets around a big corporate initiative like this. And we're finding that, especially with Clarity on Demand, that an increasing number of customers are using it to manage the rollout of Salesforce.com, for instance, Kellogg's used it to manage the rollout of an HR system. And any sort of a big enterprise application rollout is going to have these sorts of requirements. So having a great PPM on demand like Clarity really works for that. And so you can get a dashboard like this here and see what are all the people, what are all the various sub-projects involved with the rollout, what are the issues, what are the timelines, where we stand on budget. So what this allows us to do is all the distributed teams that are working on the rollout can collaborate. You can track all the resources, your trainers, and so forth, and you can get believable data on budgets and timelines about how well the rollout's going, where the issues are, where we are against our budget, and so forth. So before I move on to single sign-on, let me just sort of ask by a show of hands, are any of you rolling out large implementations of Salesforce or anything like that something like this might be beneficial? So I would encourage you, we've got some more collateral on this. We have a case study on Kellogg's. It's an HR system, that case study, but I think the issues are similar at our booth, and we can give you a demonstration and show you what this looks like. Single sign-on. Even Mark Benioff talked a bit about single sign-on this morning. It's one thing to get single sign-on just within your Salesforce-based apps and Google, but as we all know, those of us who are in enterprises, you've got web portals and probably have SAP or Oracle apps or something else like that floating around, maybe have some other collaboration portals to go into, performance management and expense management system. there's half a dozen or more different systems that our users need to go into. And so CA has the ability to give you single sign-on so that you can set up a user, their identity in one place, and give them access to all these different systems, even if they are going to be operating from home. So a woman came by our booth yesterday I was chatting with. They're rolling out, I think, the Service Cloud at her company, and they're going to have home-based agents. So she wants to be able to provide single sign-on. They've got a variety of other 2 or 3 other systems that these agents are going to need to get into in addition to the Service Cloud, want to have single sign-on. But the ease of administration is also important. To be able to only have to set an identity up once, and for that matter, when somebody gets terminated or changes roles, and that happens a lot with agents, they come, they go, to only have to set that up once or turn it off once and know that they are then locked out of all the systems so that nothing slips through the cracks, because it's kind of a disaster scenario, especially if you have an unpleasant termination and you think you've turned off their access to the various systems, but maybe one system got forgotten. Here you do it once, you're done. So it provides ease of use for the end user. She gets in quickly, and it provides ease of administration and better, frankly, security for setting up and for onboarding and offboarding. Oop, I went too far. So here we're sort of showing how this works. You've got the end user, and frankly, a lot of this is all transparent to them. The end user on the left there logs in, and unbeknownst to her, it goes through your policy server, and she can then get access down in the bottom center here. She logs on once and can get access to Salesforce.com and email and client-server apps, and if you have any mainframe apps, whatever you've got. But you have that policy manager with a single administrator who has centralized control for setting up identities and access and turning those off at the end of somebody's tenure with the company. Any questions about this before I move on? About single sign-on and federated identity manager? Okay. All right, let's talk now about performance management. You know, one of the things I think that I took away from Mark's talks this morning and yesterday is really the end user experience is the defining issue. Users don't know or want to know and no longer really have a need to know about all the different things that happen behind the curtains for their transactions. All they care about is how quickly is the system coming back, how quickly is my transaction getting completed. So that's why we're saying here transactions are the new constant. And that's where we have to monitor and observe performance, especially when we've got composite apps that maybe are drawing from Google Maps and PayPal and maybe some stuff from Salesforce and maybe some on-premise capabilities, and we're bringing it all together for one of these great new capabilities that we can mash up so quickly nowadays. How do we monitor that? How do we monitor what is going on at the end users, from the end user's perspective of that composite app? So what we think is important is that you get this end-to-end view of transactions. And what we're showing here, I'll walk over and highlight this a bit. What we're showing is that you got an end user, maybe they're using their iPhone or their BlackBerry, or maybe they're at the kitchen table, maybe they're at their cube, and they're doing something unbeknownst to them. It is going through a complete jungle of routers and app servers and going out to Salesforce.com and going out to Google and all sorts of other things and going through virtualized servers and finally getting back to them in 0.03 of a second or half a second or whatever it is. And who knows if maybe something happened that one of the on-demand applications that's providing part of that capability happens to be slow or happens to be problematic. So we think that there's two things that are important. One, that you be able to monitor the performance that the end user is getting at the transaction level. And two, that you get some X-ray vision, some guidance on where to go and look to see where the problem might be occurring. Because lacking that latter part, lacking the visibility into where the problem's occurring, what we end up happening when there's a problem is all the different departments go like this. My part's working, or you go on a goose chase, you're looking all over the place, where is the problem? Meanwhile, the end user's stewing, maybe you're losing revenue, maybe you're raising the blood pressure of the general manager, a bunch of bad things are happening while everybody's trying to figure out where is there a problem. If you even learn of the problem yourself before learning of it from your customer, which is the absolute worst. So, stay on this slide for a minute. So what our CA Wiley Application Performance Manager does is monitors that transaction time so that you get that early warning, and then if and when there's a problem, or maybe it's even before the user sees it, can direct you to the part of your infrastructure where the problem exists, if that in fact is where it's occurring. Maybe it's in your network infrastructure, maybe it's in an application running on your servers or your database, if you have a mainframe in the back end. It can direct you right to that, or if it perceives, as we're showing here in this slide, you can see the red on the far right, if it perceives that the problem is with an application that's coming out of the cloud, it will tell you to look there. Obviously, it does not have X-ray vision to look into what's going on within Salesforce or within Google, but at least it can tell you that's where the issue is. So you know, first of all, that you've got an issue, and you know before the phone rings, and second of all, you know where to look. We think this is going to be increasingly important as we mash up multiple online capabilities to provide what appears to the end user to be a single holistic system. The potential of problems to arise and then resolution to fall between the cracks is tremendous if you don't have this kind of holistic end transaction monitoring and diagnostics. Any questions about performance management? All right, so we've talked about 4 things here in order to make the cloud work for you. We've talked about speeding up your development and having agile planning out of the cloud, managing projects the agile way, as we say up here, attending to the nuts and bolts of planning for rollouts of applications, Salesforce.com, SAP, HR, whatever it might be, using CA Clarity on Demand. Down on the bottom left, talked about having single sign-on and centralized identity management so that you can efficiently and confidently bring people on, exit them out of the organization, and provide them access to all the systems they need cleanly, but know that you're not going to have any issues either at the front end or the back end. And then last but not least, how you keep everybody up and running with application performance management, especially for composite apps. So I think we've got about 10 minutes left. Happy to take some more questions now, or can give you 10 minutes back in your day. Any questions or discussion anybody would like to raise? All right, hey, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.